In part 2 of their conversation, Laura Waters and Paula White discussed the role of JerseyCAN in the state's educational landscape.
What do you hope for JerseyCAN to accomplish, say, over the next several years?
As I think about what I want for JerseyCAN moving forward, it's really about continuing to be essentially, a watchdog, if you will, for want of a better word, for what is going on in the state in education and elevating that at all times, regardless, of how that may feel or whether or not, we're stepping on any toes, because ultimately we're here for one purpose and one purpose only. I also am very cognizant of the fact that, prior to the pandemic, it wasn't all peaches and cream in the state, right, with regard to education. So now we want to be able to raise conversations about some of the foundational aspects of education in our state. For example, literacy. What has been our approach to literacy? And, how has that been informed by the science of what it means to educate students well in terms of reading? We know that we have a gargantuan achievement gaps, right? One could argue that it's a gulf and not a gap. And so those kinds of things are informed by the curricular decisions that we make. And so we need to advance that conversation, and we need to really, make it clear that we do not have the luxury of experimentation. We do not have the luxury of sort of, feel-good decisions that are not tethered to the reality of how students learn. So we really, really need to be focused on that. And JerseyCAN is prepared to raise and maintain that conversation. As we think about what has transpired with in-person learning or the lack thereof, we know that Black and Brown communities suffered the most from students not being in-person learning, and we know that there will be continued fallout for that. So, we have really advocated for high dosage tutoring, for example, through the New Jersey Tutoring Court to try to, remediate some of what has occurred in terms of learning recovery. We're going to need to continue to think about how to expand programs like that, to make sure that we are continuing to sort of close the gap year over year for the students. And I think we also need to be concerned about social emotional aspects of our students' experiences. I think that has been a conversation that has been happening because we've seen that, what's happened in recent years has wreaked havoc on the mental health of our students. And our students, learning is an effective process. You have to forgive me, I'm a traditionally trained teacher. My degree is in child development. So I'm always thinking about, our children and how does learning occur? So it's really the intersection of excellent teaching as well as the right environment in which to incubate learning. And speaking of teaching, the last thing that I would say there is that we need to really be thinking about the pipeline of educators coming into the profession. How do we make sure that teachers are eminently qualified for the roles that they will fill and make the process more amenable to bringing in diverse candidates, teachers of all different backgrounds that reflect the students that are in the classroom, because we know that that is not a feel-good endeavor. We know that there is really strong data about the difference that that can make. And, as someone who founded a public charter school and led school improvement for 200 plus traditional public schools, I am very agnostic about the kinds of public schools that we have. What I care about is quality. And I think that with JerseyCAN, we want to make sure that we are supportive of quality public schools, regardless of their governance structure or anything else like that. So we want to make sure that schools that are doing a great job of educating students are allowed to maintain, their role in the community, and where appropriate, to serve more students. And we want to make sure that the ecosystem that makes that possible, be that adequate facilities, be that the number of seats, that ecosystem is in place to make sure that we are providing a great education to as many students as possible, even as we work to lift all boats in the sphere.
Paula, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
I am humbled to be able to take up this helm and to continue the work that has begun. So I'm really happy to be here, and I thank you so much for this conversation.